Welcome back to your passion, purpose, and personal brand. Today, we have what I know is truly a groundbreaking conversation that is sure to shift your perspective about leadership, business, and the evolving world of work. I am honored to introduce our guest, Dr. Don Barden. He is a globally recognized behavioral economist, sought after consultant, and acclaimed author known for transforming companies through his innovative approach called the Perfect Plan. Named as one of North America's top 30 most transformational leaders by John Maxwell, which that's something to note, Don has influenced industry giants such as Microsoft, Coca-Cola, and Walmart, guiding them to remarkable growth and success. In his latest visionary book, Here Come the Girls, it's a celebration of why women will take over global leadership in 2028. Don brings forward his compelling evidence-based predictions that women leaders are poised to redefine global leadership, sparking unprecedented economic growth and organizational success. Join us today as we dive into what this exciting shift means for business leaders and for all of us in the future of work. So, Don, welcome to the show.
Hey, Lisa, thank you for having me. Wow, a great introduction. I really appreciate that. But forget all that. Thank you for you being you. I really appreciate this podcast and what you're doing and how you're helping not just women, but everybody out there. And I think what you're doing is vital, it's important, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you for doing what you do.
Well, and I think it aligns with what I stand for, bringing humanity back to business, but also when we are ourselves, we can bring our best selves to work. So as we get started, your career path is very intriguing, Don. From Wall Street to consulting with global giants and your philanthropic involvement as well. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how it has influenced your leadership and philosophy.
Oh, sure. No, thank you. I always start off by telling everybody the same thing. My career, my life has been somewhere between Forrest Gump and Jason Bourne. And if you slam them together, unfortunately, it tends to be more on the Forrest Gump side of things. But it's just been an amazing life, an amazing career. And I think when I look back at it, the key to it was one I was always willing to try. I've been that way since I was 2 years old. It's like I'll be the kid who tries it. Sometimes it's not real smart. Can you jump off of this building or the roof or do whatever little boys do? I'd be the kid up there doing it. But at the same time, as my career was starting, I really think the key was in the power of observation, just being able to watch what everyone else is doing, and then education. I was a state school kid. I was a terrible student at first, but then I sort of had an aha moment and I turned it around and committed myself not to education for the academia of it, but for the sheer knowledge. And I just believe that the more you know, and the more you're in tune to other people, the more you have the opportunity to enjoy this beautiful life. So when you combine that and observation, it's been a lot of fun. But I always tell people, education is not about an institution. Education is what you make of it. And I'll take a state school kid over an Ivy League kid anytime when it comes to impact. And nothing against the Ivy League kids, they're great, but it's up to the individual. So if you're committed, you're a little bit courageous, and you seek capabilities. You look at other people and say, what can I learn? It can be a lot of fun. And so I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that point is really worth noting. It's not where you go to school, it's what you do with the education that you gain as a result of that. And it can happen anywhere. It can happen from very early beginnings, and you have been able to demonstrate that. So tell us a little bit about what led you, because you are well known for the Perfect Plan. You've impacted so many companies with that. For those not familiar with the Perfect Plan, tell us what it is.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. Again, the power of observation. I got lucky and fortunate and committed to taking advantage of these opportunities when they presented itself to me. So early in my career, I was trying to figure out what skill set I had and what I continued to grow in. And I had the ability to simplify the complex. That's really what it is to look at something and go, oh, that's not so difficult. But then to communicate it back to somebody else, puzzles, whatever you want to call it. But it meant a lot to me. So I was trying to figure out what's the most complicated thing that's the most needed thing, but at the same time that people have the hardest time understanding, and how can I be that bridge to help them engage? Now, when I was thinking through this, it was nowhere close to that philosophically. Generate. I think after 40 years of this, I can say it a little bit better than I didn't think that at 22 years old. I was just trying to figure out what I can do with myself with it. But I ended up getting an opportunity to work on Wall Street and for Wall Street based firms. And then I quickly grew because I just worked really hard. And I give my dad credit for that. My dad was a Depression era World War II kid and came out of it and just worked. And I always saw him work and never complain. So he taught me work ethic. And I thought, well, if you can apply this work ethic to this new world, where can you go and what can you do? So through a couple of bumblings around and some good fortune, I was able to land a job for some really big companies and work my way up. And then quickly, I also understood that some of these skills were universal, that they could be translated in any language that worked out. And so I got to be on an international team. And when I was on this international team, I was a young guy. So that meant I got all the fun jobs, which is code for the
Right.
ones nobody else wants to do, right? So they
Right.
would send me all over the world sometimes with a second's notice. And I'd be working on these deals or closing the deals, really is what I did. And I started noticing this commonality between the people we were working with. And this is very important because this is 25 years ago. There was no LinkedIn, there was no social media. Cell phones were a luxury, so we weren't as connected then as we are now. There weren't TED Talks, there weren't online courses to study and do. It was just sort of the last of the wild era of business around the world. But I started noticing that they would send me to Mexico, to Eastern Europe, to Russia, to India, to China, Japan, all these places, which was awesome. It was an incredible life. But I started noticing that these elite performers, men and women, were all the same. It was just like the Bill Murray movie Groundhog's Day. It just kept repeating itself. The deal was different. The money was different. The language, the culture, everything about it was different. But the people were the same. So I went back to my boss at the time, who was a CEO, and I said, "Hey, I think this is worthy of exploration." And he said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And I said, "These elite people that we work with, and because of who we were, we got to work with the A teams. When we went
Mhm.
places." I said, "We're very fortunate to work with the world's best and brightest, but I see this commonality among them, and I'd like to study it." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" And I said, "Well, if you pay for it, I guess I'm giving I'm giving it to you." And he said, "Fine." He said two rules here. He said, "Number one, you always own your work." He said, "I'm not going to do this unless you own it." So that was very grateful. I'm very grateful of his generosity. He said, "But number two," he goes, "it's got to be impactful for our own business. My job is to seek ROI on anything we spend money on. And I just want to make sure that we can apply it." And I said, "I really do." And he said, "So what I hear you saying is you believe that these elite people in the world, these elite leaders around the world have some type of secret sauce." And I said, "Yeah, I do. And I see it. I just can't quantify it. I can't get my head, I can't structure it yet." And he said, "Go for it. Go study." He goes, "But you got a real job." I'm like, "Okay." So I had to do my real job and do all this international work. At the same time, we put together an academic study where we went through this and we studied these people. And it became very clear very early on. It starts with their mindset and what they do. So the perfect plan, I think, is still in 39 countries. It's done really, really well. And I'm really excited when I still get notes and emails and thank yous for it. It did structure the obvious. And it was about the mindset of these elite leaders and how they run to work to serve people. They run to work to help others. And if you can do that first and then follow a very, very specific pattern that they have in their communication, it's like the laws of the universe just dump abundance on you. And so we saw that and we were able to structure it, but we were able to use science to explain it. And what I tell people all the time is you can read the book and double your business tomorrow. That's fine. But to control it like a valve, you need to understand it. So we put a lot of effort into helping people understand the science behind why people express gratitude first, why people keep thoughts to less than three items. What's the science behind that? And why businesses are looking for ease of business and what it means to be creative, what it means to put other people first. And so we were able to say, here's the pattern of what these people do, but better, here's the science to prove why it works. It's not just a fluke. There's actual support behind it. and it did really well. So it sort of it changed my life, and it changed a lot of other people's lives for the better, and we're really thankful to be a part of that.
Well, that's great. So when you come into a business or a business works with a perfect plan, what could they expect to see done?
Well, that's a great question. I always, I tell people this all the time. If you go to the doctor's office and you go see your doctor, she does not give you a prescription and then say, "Oh yeah, what's wrong with you?" You have to have a conversation, about it. And the question I always start with is, "What is your ideal outcome? What are you trying to achieve?" And if you can be very, very honest, transparent, and just a little vulnerable about it, it's amazing the answers that you get. You see some business owners and C-suite people say, "Look, the business is fine, but we give 1,000 scholarships a year. I want to give 3,000. How can we increase that?" I mean, that becomes their purpose. Or they'll say, "This is killing me. Our business is doing great, but it's sucking the life out of me. I don't have any time, to do this." Or worse, they'll say, "Things are going great. Top line is great, but I'm not making any money, and I'm just not happy." So what I try to do is look at Sullivan's Four Freedoms when I first meet somebody and say, "Look, there's only four freedoms you're looking for as a business owner or as a C-suite person or anybody really, but they have more control. And that's time, money, relationship, and purpose." And that was Dan Sullivan's theory. He said, if you can create harmony around that, then you've got something. And then you free yourself up to grow the business in greater ways. So I try to figure out what it is they're looking for, missing, just really craving for. And then I say, okay, now let's see how the perfect plan can help you get there. Then we write the prescription, for it. And it's usually, again, helping them structure the obvious. Most organizations know how to do it, but they get it out of order. Or they, over time, they're growing, they get a little fat and happy, and they cut a piece out that was working before. So in a weird way, the perfect plan helps bring them back to the genesis or the embryonic stage of their business when they were doing that. They probably were doing that, but life and busyness of life gets in the way and they slip. So we help them reorganize it and structure it back to the playbook. And the playbook is really, really simple. There's three promises and three beliefs. And if it goes top down and you can impact your customers, you can impact your culture, you can impact your employees, you can get your entire leadership team doing it, then you'll get your employees doing it. And then what happens is, I'm not exaggerating. You can grow at will. You can literally turn the valve up and down because not everybody wants to double. Not everybody wants to triple. Some people just want to cruise along and maintain. That's fine. Some people want to grow 10 and 20 times. That's fine too. This helps them get there, but it happens because they structure the obvious based on what their ideal outcome is. And 90% of the time, it's just helping them refine that, not refine it, find it again. Uh, get back, get back on it, and they're usually very, they get pretty emotional,
Yeah.
with because it helps them fall in love again with their business, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm most proud of. I hate the tears, but I love the tears when it's happy, because they really do sometimes just hug me and say, "This is what I was missing," and again, it's
Mhm.
no secret. It's just get you back on track, and that helps out a lot.
Yeah, and I think you bring out a really great point here. What I hear is a lot of times as businesses grow, we keep thinking we have to add on more things, right? And so it gets really convoluted. We've got a lot of just layers upon layers, but to get back to the core of it and have an outside perspective to come in and help do it,
Yeah,
there's a lot of benefit from that. So
absolutely.
I see this observation starting to weave through your story, Don.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I know it's observation that led you to this new book, Here Come the Girls. It's a celebration, I want to note,
Yeah.
of why women will take over global leadership by 2028. So, what sparked your interest in this topic and led you to dive into it?
Sure. You just nailed it. It's observation. But I always tell people, and this is where I put my economics professor hat on. I always tell people one of the most dangerous things we do in life is judging the past. I hate
Mm,
that.
mhm,
And I tell students this all the time. I tell businesses this, and there's some angry people in the world that are talking about things that happened in the past. And some of it was terrible. And I'm sorry if that happened to you. I really, really am. But we're in the present now.
mhm.
So it's about getting back to this moment. And you learn from the past, you prepare for the future, but you live in the moment. And I tell people this all the time. The first step to anything is releasing that judgment. And here's the easiest way to do it. When you realize that you are the past of your future self, in other words, your children, your grandchildren, what are they going to be looking back and saying about you? Now, we tend to think we're the most advanced civilization ever. And we probably are. We don't know, but we're guessed with it. Okay. So we're the most advanced civilization. So let's just talk about medical science. We can do heart transplants, lung transplants, eye transplants. We're building more and more bionics into people's bodies and all. And we think, gosh, this is such an awesome time to be alive. We're doing things now we've never done before. Well, guess what? Your future self, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren are going to look back at you and refer to you as a barbarian. They're going to say, my God, they used to take body parts and move them from here to here. They couldn't just regrow them, or, they just didn't have a mechanical thing, beam it in there and make it fixed. What you had to deal with things like this, you barbarians. So I always like, look, don't look to the back. Go, don't look to the past and judge it and spend your energy there. Look to the future of what can be. And that's the biggest thing. So that leads to observation, because I don't judge the past. I just don't. There's some terrible things, and I'm sorry, but I don't judge it. But over 40 years, and I told somebody this morning, I started my career at the very end of the Mad Men era. Okay, if anybody knows what that is, right? There was a lot of drinking and smoking involved. There are a lot of great clothes. My God, I'd give to go back to that. Men and women, the way they used to dress and all, it's just so cool, right?
A lot of fun.
Now it's fine. But I kind of rode through that era on Wall Street and in business, and I started observing the change. And this is not a judgment, but it's a change of more and more women were in the C-suite position and they were out there, to the point that I started saying, this is almost ridiculous. This isn't an observation. This is a trend. And when you look at trends, you say, okay, is this a sustainable trend, or is it just a fluke, an emotional moment, an anomaly that's happening? Well, that was pretty easy to look at and say, this is not an anomaly. So I just started noticing more and more women in leadership positions because I got to talk to them, and hopefully they became clients, and we started to engage. But then I started noticing from an emotional standpoint, I was like, wow, these ladies are really good. If I had to pick the clients and the things to work with, I'd rather work with her than him. And I'm not knocking him. I'm just like, she's good. What is it about her that's making this special? So I just put my doctor hat back on. I said, let's approach this from an economics perspective. And in any type of science, especially economics, there's two sides to it: quantitative and qualifiable. Quantitative is the numbers, right? It is what it is. Qualifiable is the quality of the work, which is usually phenomenological. It's like, wow, they're really good at it. Don't care about the math. They're just good at it. But the two rarely get together. Usually you're either mathematically sound or you're phenomenologically sound, but they don't come together. So I started looking at this, and I'm like, wow, what is this trend that I'm seeing that seems to be lasting? So I just started the science and the study of it. And then it was pretty clear what was happening, that women are gaining speed in the C-suite and the leadership and the entrepreneurial position. Right now, we're currently at 42%. So 42% of all businesses, all leadership around the world is controlled by women. And people can pick little hyper or outlying things. We're like, well, they're only at 15%, or they're whatever. Overall is 42%, is coming in that direction. Some people are going to be ahead, some people are going to be behind, but let's look at the mass of what's going now. And so we put the math together, which is really nerdy. So I apologize to everybody out there who's not a math person, but we're able to look at it and forecast it with a momentum that in 2028, in 32 months, it's not far away, women are going to take over all of global leadership. It's mathematical. There's nothing we can do to stop it. And so you look at that and you say, okay, that's going to happen. It's going to sustain itself for a very, very long period of time, like a generation or two before it switches back. So there's nothing in the future that says that women taking over leadership isn't here to stay. It's just math. It's going to happen. And we can show you 1,000 reasons dating back to the 50s, from birth control to change of educational status to medical schools, everything. You look at all these different variables that were going separately, but now we realize they're correlated, together. So quantifiably, it took care of itself. So I was like, well, that's pretty simple. Who cares? It just doesn't matter. So then I started looking at the quantifiable side and like, well, wait a minute. we're scientists here, right? And as
Mhm.
a scientist, you cannot be afraid to ask very, very hard questions. And there's a thing in science called the null hypothesis, which means it either is or it isn't.
Mhm.
It's yes or no. And no is just as important as yes, because no means don't do that
Right.
anymore. And one of my favorite leaders that we study was Kathy Ireland, who's got $1 billion empire. She started from a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model at
Mhm.
16 to now being one of the wealthiest self-made women in the world. And she's a joy and a dream as a person, but she's got a great line. And the line is no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
When you say no, yeah, or anything other than yes is no, right?
Right.
However you want to look at it. But no is a complete sentence. So in science, when you look at that, you have to say, all right, buckle up. It's either yes or no. Let's figure this thing out. So the hard question to ask was, okay, we know quantifiably that in 32 months, women are going to take over global leadership. And that's everything from the local deli to parliament. It's going to be dominated by women. The trend is there. The momentum is there. It is not going to stop. There's nothing to say stop. Now comes the hard question. Ladies, are you any good at it? That's the
Mhm.
hard question, right?
Mhm.
So we started the phenomenological study of it, and we studied thousands of women around the world, and we started looking at their data. We started talking to them. We started saying, "Tell me your story and what is happening." And I'm telling you, that's when the jaw-dropping stuff started happening.
Mm.
For example, if you have a female-owned business compared to a similar male-owned business, same geographic area, same everything about them, you can't compare people on different sides of the country, but they were right beside each other in the same market space. Overall, like 90+% of the female-owned businesses outperform the male-owned business 3 to 1 in revenue and profit. So it's like, huh, well, that's
Wow.
interesting, right? So women are outperforming men 3 to 1. Then you go, okay, liars, damn liars, and statisticians. That's how math works, right? There's only three types. You're either a liar, you're a damn liar, or you're a statistician. One of those three. Okay. So statistics can be warped. So you look at it and say, okay, but what else is happening here?
Mhm.
How do we know this isn't just a fluke? Well, another fun fact. In the United States alone, the average American worker is 39 years old. That 39-year-old worker, male or female, changes jobs every 3 years.
Mhm.
So kids coming out of college today are told to expect 10 3-year careers. You're going to be moving
Mhm.
around a lot.
Yeah.
There's some economic evidence that that's good because their production goes down. So basically, what you're saying is, I'm going to get the best 3 years out of your life. I'm going to plug an umbilical cord into you. I'm going to suck the energy out of you. Then you can go be somebody else's problem. That's what's happening.
Mhm.
But then we started noticing, well, that's not always true. In fact, when you look at a female owned business, her average employee stays 6 years. So she has double the retention. But guess what? Her employees' production, however you measure it, goes up in years 4, 5, and 6. So she's
Mhm.
keeping her workforce twice as long and increasing the production of their workforce. Oh my God. I mean, that alone, that's more important than the tripling of the income and the profits. Because
Yes.
now she's got a workforce which cuts costs, creates better culture, does everything. And then we started saying, okay, wait a minute, let's go to the consumer. Okay, Coke and Pepsi, Red Bull, Monster, BMW, Mercedes, whatever. What makes you choose one company over the other? And the consumers, male and female, told us what it is. And it's about culture and it's about connectivity. Then we went to the employees and say, why do you leave at 3 years? But hey, why do you guys stay here for her six
Mhm.
years? The exact same answers. They gave us the same answers the consumer was giving us. Then we go back to her, the female leader, and say, okay, what are you doing? How do you do this?
Mhm.
So that's where the science kicked in. We had a phenomenological doctoral study that went through this with open-ended, semi-structured for all you nerds out there wanting to know how we did it. The social construct of it was pure because and it's very, very narrow. And we were very able to ask them what they do. And what they did as leaders, do as leaders, aligns perfectly with what their workforce, male and female, is crying out for,
Mhm.
causing them to increase production and increase longevity. At the same time, the consumer is saying, I want to be with that company. Sometimes they didn't even know it was female owned, but they just wanted it. So now we see the trifecta. We see the alignment of the culture of leadership that she's creating, the culture of the workforce that she's nurturing, and then the consumers who are just running toward her. So we're like, okay, Now there's proof in the phenomenon. Now we know because when you take that and you say it's sustainable, and then you take the math and say, by the way, there's no turning back, it's going to happen. Buckle up. Because again, in economics, I tell people this all the time. One thing that's interesting about female leadership over male leadership is she does not seem to be so driven toward mergers and acquisitions. A
Hmm.
female owned business seems to be more driven toward collaboration. So just think about it this way. If you've got a pool of businesses around your community, and we know in the next few years, the vast majority of those are going to be run by women, which means they're going to take a 3x jump than what it is now. So the economy is going to grow 3x. But then you go, but wait a minute. The employees are staying, the employees are happier, which means they spend more money, which means they become consumers. The consumers are saying, we want what she's got, well, that culture that she's doing and she's making here. But that starts to affect all the companies. And look at it this way. Since they don't believe in mergers and acquisitions, they believe in collaboration. If you've got a bunch of businesses start collaborating with each other and they're all growing 3x, the way math works is you cannot add or subtract percentages. You can only multiply and divide percentages.
Right.
So when multiple companies are growing at 3x, that's where it gets exciting because we're not talking about, oh, that's kind of cool. We're talking about a combination of a collaboration here that's going to create a 3x cubed
Mm.
economy. So we're talking 9x. And what I tell people is if we're half wrong, who cares? I mean, it's
That's
buckle
right.
up. This economy is about to have the biggest jump it's ever had. Employees are going to go back to more longevity. Costs are going to be cut down. People are going to be more energetic about how they spend their money and where they spend it. And it's going to be just this incredible abundance that's happening in our economy. And the single point of reference that goes back to it is women in leadership. Because frankly, they're better than guys. Now, it doesn't mean that guys are bad. It's just men have been trained through a patriarchal system for a while that's not going to correlate with the moments that we're experiencing today, nor the time period our culture is moving to globally into the future. So it's just an evolutionary point that, in a weird way, is going to be revolutionary. And it's all because of the women. And it's something, and I love what you said. Thank you for pointing that out. It's a celebration.
It
It's
is a
not.
celebration. And Don, I'm just like, my heart's going through my chest because I'm so excited because not because of the women thing, but because that we have been looking and we've been spinning our wheels, we've been
Yeah.
bumping into walls. So the first thing I think of as I work with companies creating cultures where people want to work, right? Like I think about the amount of resources that goes into onboarding and offboarding people,
Oh,
the
yeah.
the endless rounds of interviews, six, seven, eight, like they're looking at what's wrong with you. They're not looking in the rearview mirror, like what are we doing? So much with that.
Yeah.
But then also the dynamics and the possibility of these companies who can work together, who can collaborate, what that would do for an area.
Right.
And I got one more. Take another breath here. The thought that this poly crisis that we are experiencing in nearly every realm, everything breaking down, the disruption, because it's no longer working, this gives a breath of hope
Oh, yeah.
to our companies, to our ability to work. There's just so much that I'm so excited about hearing about this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I tell students this all the time. The greatest economist ever was not Keynes or Friedman or any of those
Mhm.
people you hear about. It was Charles Darwin. And if you take Darwin's theories, because he was a biologist, and you apply it to biology, he's 50-50, maybe 40-60. He didn't get it all right. Okay, we know that now. You take his principles and apply it to economics, grand slam, walk off home run every time. His theories applied to economics is everything. And basically what he was saying was the economy evolves and we reinvent ourselves all the time. And during that transitional process, it's either going to come internally or externally. Sometimes it comes both. Another ice age, that'll disrupt
Mhm.
stuff. A meteor hits and takes out the dinosaurs. Yeah, that's a pain. But oh well, too bad for the dinosaurs. How did we survive? So there's going to be some moments of disruption, but that's necessary to get there. And
Mhm.
and those organizations that look at that with excitement, man, you can't stop this thing. And I tell people this all the time. This is sort of my punchline for this is, you can be a part of this into the future. But If you're doing it because you think, oh, I'm lucky to be here, that's a bad model.
Hmm.
Luck favors the prepared. So, what are you doing to be prepared for this? And that's going to take some effort. That's going to take some thought. You're going to have to sit down and say, okay, this is going to happen. What do I need to do in my business to be prepared for it and to take advantage of it and to embrace it? And that might mean thinking differently. Follow me on this. You have to change the way you think about how you think about the way that you think about your thinking. In other words, don't change
That's
your
four
mind.
layers.
Yeah, I know. It's weird, right? Change the way you think about how you think about the way you think about your thinking. In other
Mm.
words, should I just look at this differently? I don't have to change my mind. I just need to look at it
Hmm.
differently. And one of the overlying theories on it, and Hardy and Sullivan did this theory too. It's called who, not how. Oldest organizational theory on the planet, right? Literally, it goes back to the earliest writings that we have that talk about this. It's basically called who, not how. And I love these guys for being able to simplify that and put it in modern ways where most people can read this. Basically, great leaders don't have to know how to do everything. They need to know who knows how to do things.
Hmm.
And what we're seeing with these women is their ability to reach out and give their who's permission to do their job. It gives them as leaders permission to do their job, which means they can go out and be more innovative and creative and deal with bigger customers and think differently about their thinking because they know that the ship is running great, that the people out there are empowered, they're valued, and they can go out there and knock it out. Whereas the traditional model that we're coming out of, the evolution, the revolution that we're leaving behind, the patriarchal system, isn't always about that. Men are taught that you fix things, and there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. In fact, some guys, if it doesn't need fixing, we might just break it so we can fix it because we're really good at fixing things, right? But that doesn't empower the team very much. She's really good at fixing things by empowering the team and giving them. And there's a methodology to it. There's a three-step process that women follow that men don't follow traditionally that sets her apart and causes that 3x growth and causes the double in the retention and causes the consumers to run toward her. But the big aha moment is, and I say this all the time, it's not a girl thing. It's just
Hmm.
something girls do, which means we can teach the guys how to do it too. So think about this. If women hit that tipping point and it goes to about 60%, which will at first, and then move to 75 and 80%, there's still 20% of the economy out there that's in sort of the old ways. When they start shifting and doing it, even though they're male, they're just following a proven process, then it's not 3x cube. I can't even measure it. I don't know, what's going
Hmm.
to happen. It might be 3x to the seventh or eighth power or something. It's just amazing what's going to happen. So we're in a position now where we're seeing a rebirth of the economy that's going to be driven by women at the exact same time the consumer, the workforce, everything out there does it. But you're right, Lisa. There's a lot of noise and there's a lot of people out there that want to be mad or bitter about the change when they should be embracing it. But at the same time, let go of the past. I'm sorry. You know what? And I tell women this all the time. A lot of women took a lot of heat and had a rough ride getting us to where we are now. And there's still some out there, and there's guys that experience the same thing. So it's not a
Hmm.
necessary, but I give it to women over the past 20, 30 years of fighting and scrapping the way. Those first pioneer women who came out into the workforce and really did it, they faced a hard ride. It was just tough, but they did it. And now it's like, okay, let's celebrate that too, but we don't have to do that anymore. It's different. So, what can we do to embrace this and move forward? And ironically, men are more enthusiastic about this than women are. So, it's kind of
Well,
cool.
and that was a question I was going to have because if you think about traditionally, we have the boardroom, which was very heavily dominated by males, and women
Sure.
came in, and all of a sudden, women started dressing differently. Like we started wearing these suits and these big,
Yeah.
padded shoulders. We started acting
Don't forget the big
differently.
hair. You got to have the big
Yeah,
hair.
yeah,
Yeah. The patty shoulder
exactly.
pads and the big hair. Welcome back to the 80s. It
Yeah,
was great.
exactly. But then women felt like they had to start acting differently to have conversations with men, and that's when I think kind of set men on edge. Or like, well, you're not acting like a woman, but it's how do you measure success in a man and how they act,
Yeah.
and the contrast with how women have to try and act like that, but they're not seen as successful. Isn't that
Right.
correct?
Right. That's exactly right. Because if you were an NBA player and you were 6'8" and somebody comes up there and they're like, 5'9", and they say, I'm going to play real hard and do this. I've got to act like you. I got to be you. You're looking at it going, yeah, but you're not me. You got to be 7 feet tall to play in this thing. I'm cheering for you. Good luck. Every decade, some little dude gets in there and does good, but you just can't do it. So what happens when women try to be men, it created an adverse effect from the men in a social structure because they're looking at it going, why are you trying to be a guy? No, they didn't know how to vocalize it. And it was common and it was routine and it was something that had to be done. It was that inflection point that had to happen. But here's what's interesting. When we studied thousands of female leaders around the world who did not know each other, it's not like we got them all in a room and said, hey, ladies, let's talk. I mean, this was individual hours and hours of interviews with these women. 100% of the female leaders today celebrate their femininity. They do not want to be guys. They don't want to dress like guys. They don't want to act like guys. And even you see in the past presidential elections, you saw the pantsuits come back out. And I was like, my God, I wish you would wear a dress. I mean, celebrate being a woman. And if you don't like dresses, don't wear a dress. I don't care. But you know what I mean? It's like, why are you still trying to be a guy? Be a girl because that's what people want. And we saw that. And again, I'm not arguing about social construct, who wears what, I don't care. Do what makes you feel good, but don't do something because you think it's expected somewhere else. It is not. People want you to be the freest and most beautiful you can be. And I think that time period of women trying to act like men is over. It's still out there. It's dragging around. There's going to be some people that still do it. But the old joke, and forgive me for hope this isn't a G-rated thing, but there's an old joke we used to have on Wall Street. What do you call a beautiful, rich, accomplished woman who's great in leadership? She's beautiful, she's wealthy, and she's just the best of the best at what she does.
Oh, she's going to be a bitch.
A bitch, total
Yeah.
bitch. Exactly right. Because she had to be that way to get there.
Right.
But again, that's gone. We don't have to do that anymore. But I want to celebrate those women because, man, they put on the armor and they got out there and they did it. They went to fight in a system that the current construct of the leadership wasn't ready to do it. And I tell people this all the time. There's only one reason and one reason only males became the gender that was leading the world and leading all this. Just one thing in economics and one thing only, and that's red muscle mass.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. Because if you look at us through the economy, people have a really short-term memory. So they look at the world today, and then again, they try to judge the past. Good God, I'm 60. I've seen the world change so much in the past 40 years of me working that I'm just like blown away. And I tell my kids who are in their 30s now, I'm like, look, kid, I've seen this movie before. It's going to be okay, because it does repeat itself. But you look back and you say, okay, wait a minute. Let's just be honest here. We've had more change in the past few decades than we have the past several thousand years. So let's look back at the 1,000 years and let's figure out why men were in charge. Red muscle mass. We had an agricultural economy. Guys like me, we're better at plowing the fields and cutting down the trees than you are. Doesn't mean you can't do it. We can just do more. It's just the density of the red muscle mass. Then we moved to the Industrial Revolution. Well, okay, you got to turn a wrench 10,000 times a day. Guys are better at it, okay? And then the social construct back then, it wasn't all before the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't like all these big giant companies were there. There were a handful of them, but most of them were small businesses and farms, right? So the woman's role was labor production. That's the truth. Okay. Then you look back historically and you say, well, she had 10 children and 6 of them survived. Yeah, good. That's 6 new labor forces on the farm, to do it. So I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that's life. That is how we emerged as a society. And because the guys were having to cut down the trees and farm the fields and do things, then they just got together, collaborated, and they became the business people. Well, guess what? We don't have people out there farming like we used to. It's all automated. We're not cutting down trees. We're not running from the saber-toothed tigers anymore. We've gotten through all these industrial revolutions. And so you look at it, and even 100 years ago, if you go to a Ford factory, over 100 people touched a car from beginning to end. All men, or mostly men, with exception of the World War II women's efforts, Rosie the Riveter and all that, which is great.
Right.
That started it, by the way. So we look back at that and go, okay, well, it took over 100 people to build a car. It's less than 5 now, right?
That's
Just
amazing.
don't need it, right?
Right.
So everything is leveled out. And that's why we came up with the title, or the marketing people, Here Come the Girls. we just don't need the red muscle mass anymore. So the playing field just leveled. Now, these women, the pit bulls with lipstick we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
they had to fight that hard fight. They were still in it. So they had to do that. Yeah, it's still out there a little bit, but it's not even measurable, to be honest with you. And if somebody's listening, and go, "Well, I'm still in it." Yeah, well, think about another job. But if you don't like it, then there's other ways out there. So the world has leveled itself back down. At the same time, the math of education and the social construct has
Mhm.
changed, and now all of a sudden it's level, and we're looking around going, "Oh my God." They're the best asset the economy has ever had. It's the woman. Give it to her. Let her be in charge because her way of doing things aligns so critically and perfectly with what the workforce wants and what the consumer wants. And by the way, consumers are all members of the workforce. So, boom, there you go. It's
Mhm.
a two for one deal. Then you get to look at it and go, get out of her way. Just
Yeah.
get out of her way.
Yeah.
And what this study did was said, okay, quantifiably it's fine, but qualifiably, how can we structure it? Kind of like with Perfect Plan. How do we structure it?
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, if somebody does read the book or we can work with them and they see it, you can't unsee it. You, you,
Mhm.
you just see it around all the time. And you're just like, that's the most beautiful dance. That's the most beautiful waltz. That's the most beautiful attempt in application of leadership I've ever seen. And it's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're at 42% right now. Six of the big eight firms on Wall Street now are run by women. The two that are not have a woman in the queue to come up and do it.
Mhm.
And then look at Mexico. Mexico just elected its first female president, and she's Jewish. The most Catholic country in the world just elected a female
Amazing.
Jew to be their president. And well, it's arguing. I mean, we'll see if she's any good or not, but she wouldn't have gotten there if she wasn't. So we see this happening all around us, but we're also busy. We don't step back and just look around. And we were fortunate enough to do it and to just, with the power of observation, say, oh, but then we took the scientific approach, did the doctoral study. I spent 4 years studying this, and it's just undeniable to the point, like I said, you can't unsee it.
Well, Don, I know our listeners are waiting on the edge of their seats. I've got two things. All right. So, as someone
Okay.
with a messaging and marketing brain, I'm going back to this where you teed it up. What do the consumers want? What do the workers want? What do these female leaders want? What did you see was the consistent thing that ran through what they wanted?
Yeah.
And then part two is what are these women doing differently?
Yeah. What the consumer and the workforce want is to feel like they're part of the deal, to feel like they're valued, that they are part of the decision-making process, not like I'm being forced to buy something. Because we do live in a world of choice right now, which goes back to why the workforce changes every 3 years. They have a choice. Back
Mhm.
when my dad worked for the railroads for 40 years after World War II, 40 years. It never crossed his mind to go work somewhere else. But those days are gone. And I don't know if he had a choice, to be honest with you. He was a laborer. He did it. He worked hard. He was the greatest generation. Can't take any of that away from the man. But at the end of the day, he didn't have a whole lot of choices. Now we've all got choices. So if you're going to make choices, you're going to go to where you feel valued and you feel like you're part of it, that it means something, that you're seen, heard, and understood. That's what the consumer is looking for, and that's what the workforce is looking for. That sums it all up. Now, there's marketing, there's branding, there's hype, there's stuff that gets up and go. Because we always look at Red Bull and Monster, Coke and Pepsi, and like, why? They need each other, by the way. Red
Mhm.
Bull needs Monster. Coke needs Pepsi. I mean, there's all types of studies around that. But ultimately, what is it that creates that engagement? It's the ability to feel valued and empowered and understand that they're part of it. Like you see me, you hear me, you understand me as a consumer. Therefore, I will reward you by commerce. I will reward you by buying your products and do stuff. And you flip that around and you go to most businesses, and I have this weird ability. When we sit down with C-suite people, I usually get the mission statement, the value statement. They tell me all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, that was great. Good training. No, tell me the truth.
Right.
What are you really
Exactly.
trying to accomplish? And the truth is, for most businesses, They're seeking four freedoms. They want the freedom of time, money, relationship, and purpose. That's what the
Hmm.
C-suite wants. But what they really want to get there is to sell more things to more people faster. That's
Hmm.
it, right? Now, to do that, you've got to have the right product. You got to have the right leadership. You got to have the right brand and marketing. You got to have the right distribution sources. Then you have to have the ability to connect with it. And so looking back at that, that's basic business. It doesn't even have to be economics. That's just business 101 or marketing 101. It's real
Hmm.
simple. But then you look at it and go, but why is she doing it three times better than the guys are doing it?
Right.
And that's the secret sauce. That's what we figured out is how she deals with that. And so she is basically giving the consumer what they want. The traditional patriarchal male system, which I'm not knocking, which is going away. Some of the laggards haven't figured that out yet. Now some have. Look at Apple. Tim Cook's done an amazing job with
Hmm.
Apple, and what they're doing. But they're a little bit of an anomaly, right? In fact, here's an interesting stat in economics. If these big companies, UPS, Apple, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Walmart, it's closing stores, by the way, which is interesting. No effect on the economy. Walmart can lay off 25,000 people. No, the economy doesn't notice. That's
Right.
how big the economy is. Most of the world is driven by small and mid-sized businesses. If 25,000 small businesses go under, well, we got a problem.
Hmm.
We got a serious problem. But one big giant company laying off 25,000 people, grossly uncomfortable. And I would not want to be one of those people. But the economy just keeps on moving because it's there. So it's really about those small, engaged, and mid-sized businesses that she's running. She's running the big ones too, but that's the pulse of it. That's where everything happens is there. So she, as a leader, has a great understanding of the responsibility of marketing 101, business 101, economics 101, accounting 101. But she has this unbelievable galactic ability to grow it three times over everybody else. And that was the ultimate. That, I guess that's your second part of the question, but that's the ultimate piece to it. She is in absolute alignment with the workforce and the consumer.
It's not a mistake. There's nothing wrong with your video or audio buds. There's so much more to come in this podcast that we broke it into two parts. Join us next week when we pick up here and you'll hear the secret sauce that many women do naturally and how all of us can prepare for this paradigm shift in how we lead our companies. So until next week, go chase your passion. It will reveal your purpose. And when you lean hard into it with curious observation, is when you're going to find things that you didn't see. Follow those clues, and that's where you'll discover the path to find your legendary self. We'll see you here next week.